Welcome back to the Even Your Dynasty show. On today's video, we're going to talk about which three prospects I think we're going to see make their major league debut in San Francisco in 2025. As we're in spring training, uh, games are about to be starting here in a few days. And I just wanted to do one more video kind of talking about the kids before we really turn the focus over to the big league club here. So on this one, we're going to say which guys I think that we're going to see in San Francisco at some point making their debut amongst prospects. So obviously that's going to eliminate guys like Meckler, guys like Mason Black, who debuted last season. If they've made their debut at all in San Francisco, you're not making this list. So first guy, probably a pretty obvious one for a lot of people. I do think Bryce Eldridge at some point next season or this season is going to make an appearance in San Francisco. Now, there is an outside chance that they, just keep him down in the minors all year, especially if he doesn't play, great, and deals with injuries, whatever the case may be. But assuming health and continued production, I do think it's gonna reach a point at some point where they're gonna have to bring him up and start playing him. Maybe it's as a DH, maybe they don't just put him right at first. It could be a light, September call up, could be any kind of number of things. But when you hear guys like Mike Krukow talk about the fact that they think his bat is in the organization, there's a belief that his bat is already major league ready and it's going to come down to his glove. To me, that tells me that the organization knows he's close and they are trying to keep that door open for whenever he kicks it down to be able to just pivot and say, all right, you're the first baseman, which is why they're comfortable rolling with guys like Lamont Wade Jr. and Wilmer Flores for another year at first base because they don't want to tie up big time money with a guy like Alonso and years to a position where they feel like the answer is sitting in, double or triple A, depending on where they start him. So Bryce Eldridge, he's the first guy that I think is going to make his debut this season. Second player that I see making his debut, it's going to be Carson Whisenhunt. At some point, I really thought he was going to make his debut last season, and his home road splits were pretty brutal to look at. Had a sub-3 ERA at home, pitching in Sacramento, which is probably the second most pitcher-friendly. It's like the most neutral park in the Pacific Coast League. One of the few, it makes it pitcher-friendly when you make it relative to Reno and Salt Lake City and Albuquerque, all these elevation places. But his road splits were brutal. He had over an 8 ERA on the road. Changeup and fastball, still really good pitches. The changeup's possibly the best individual pitch in the entire organization, including the majors. It's that good. It generated a near, I think, almost a 50% whiff rate on that pitch last season. But the slider, curveball, he's kind of been toying with it. I think he finished with a slurve at the end of the year. He's still trying to figure something out that can be effective, and it just really hasn't. And it hasn't been good, especially with lefties. So it's one of those pitches that if he can develop that third pitch, you're probably looking at a guy that could be a really, really good starter. At the bare minimum, I think you're looking at a guy that could be a really effective bullpen arm, because when you only get to see that change up one time, it's going to be devastating to guys. So now this is where it's tricky. I'm not sure if he'll make his debut as a reliever or as a starter. As it stands, they have quite a bit of depth. The Giants are going to roll into the year with, 5 guys in the rotation. If everyone's healthy, you're probably looking at Webb, Verlander, Ray, Hicks, and then whoever wins the final job between Harrison, Birdsong, and I'll throw Roop in there as a possibility. But you also have guys like Mason Black, you have guys like Tristan Beck, you have a lot of guys that have starting experience that are right there. You also have Carson Seymour and Carson Ragsdale, who are on the 40-man roster, and Carson Whisenhunt is not, that are going to be in Sacramento to open the year. Those are also 2 starters that are probably ahead of him. But as we saw just last season, things can change really fast. You see a guy like Harrison or like a Hayden Birdsong, for instance, that was in Double-A, not on the 40-man, and he rocketed right up, passing guys like Carson Whisenhunt. So, time will tell on this one. I do think at some point, though, he is going to debut. And it might be in September. It might be as a call-up. It might be in the bullpen. It could be maybe he's just not developing as a starter the way they hope, and they decide, you know what, it's time to make that change to the pen. In which case, you look in the Giants' pen right now, they don't really have a lot of lefties. You have Eric Miller and a lot of question marks as potential options. So he could be that left-handed option, especially towards the tail end of the year. Or, like I said, as a September call-up, he uses the whole year developing as a starter, and the Giants want to get him a few more innings, so they bring him up in September and let him throw a handful of games out of the pen. But I do believe he is going to make his debut at some point this season. Now, the last person that is on my list, this is the one that's the furthest out. I had a couple that I kind of had in mind, but I almost went with a guy like Ragsdale, thinking that he, could debut in the pen at some point this year. I think he could be a really good bulk guy. He's got a big funky delivery as an option. If, inevitably when somebody gets hurt, I was like, this could be a guy that they bring up for a little while. But the guy I have the most confidence in being a potentially dominant reliever, I think Trent Harris is going to debut in the Giants pen. And I think at some point this season, we're going to see him in San Francisco, and it's going to be the start of a career in San Francisco where he is just a mainstay in the back part of the bullpen. He is, in my opinion, his stuff is that good. His fastball slider combination is absolutely disgusting. Maybe you can call it curveball, whatever you want to look, whatever you want to label his breaking ball. It's really good. And he has a really solid understanding of pitch sequencing, setting things up, if he misses a pitch, using it to set up a different pitch. I saw it a bunch of times down in Eugene, and he is just really effective. He was used both as a multi-inning reliever. They used him to save some games. I think you could use him in a variety of different situations. And he finished the year up in Richmond, got a couple appearances there. I think he's going to start in Richmond. And in my opinion, don't be shocked if he finishes in San Francisco. I think he's going to be one of their better bullpen arms that they have for quite a while. Now, he is a bit on the older side. I think he's going to be going into his age 26 season. I know he turned 26 before last season ended, at least. So a bit on the older side, but really good stuff, really nasty. I think the Giants bullpen has a lot of really young, exciting arms, reasons to be excited about the pen going forward. Guys like Ryan Walker, Camilo is obviously still there, but you got Eric Miller, Randy Rodriguez, Trent Harris is probably close. We're not going to see Reggie Crawford this season. He's had shoulder surgery, torn labrum, but 2026, if he comes back, if they can figure out a way to keep him on the field, he has a highly explosive arm. That's another bullpen option. So there are a lot of exciting arms in the Giants bullpen, and I think Trent Harris is among the best of those guys. He is really good out of the pen. So that's my third guy. Love to hear from everybody here. It was a nice quick video today. If you enjoy the content, please do like the video, subscribe to the channel. Tell me who you guys think you're going to see debuting this year. Unfortunately, unlike last season and probably the year before, a lot of guys have already made their debuts, and they're going to be really relying on a lot of these young players this year, which is exciting, but it doesn't, it's tough because most of the guys that they're going to be relying on have already debuted in the last year or so. So it's kind of a, cop out list a little bit, a couple of these guys that are probably the most obvious with Eldridge and Whisenhunt, but I did want to shine a light also on a guy like Trent Harris. So hope to hear from you guys soon. Check out the live show on Friday. It's going to be with Dan and Ricky. I am out of town this week, so you're going to want to check that out with those two guys. I will be back next week, and on next week's show, we will hopefully be having another member of the Giants 2024 draft class. So I'm not going to announce who that is until next week once we confirm. But until then, go Giants. Can't wait to watch some spring training baseball, and you guys all have a good one.